Elias Lovecraft, stage name Eli L., had always insisted that the best music lived in dust. Dust softened the edges of things, hid cracks, muted the modern world long enough for older truths to hum through. Saturday mornings he could be found at Cathedral Records, an oak-shelved maze that smelled of mildew, cardboard sleeves, and decaying perfume from the 1970s. He flipped through bins with the quiet devotion some people reserve for cathedrals of stone. When he found the blank black jacket, its spine unmarked, he felt more vibration than curiosity, as though the record inside had pulsed against his fingertips. That one, Mr. Sang, the owner, squinted through his smeared bifocals. Came in last week inside a box of gospel singles. No label, no run-out etching. Probably worthless. Worthless called to Elias more strongly than gold. He paid $3 and carried the record home under his arm like contraband. His apartment was a third-floor walk-up overlooking the Chicago L steam radiator, thrift store furniture, a desk piled with lyric scraps. The turntable, a Technics SL-1500 inherited from a dead uncle, sat on milk crates beside vintage monitors. Elias cleaned the vinyl with a carbon brush, set the stylus at the outer groove, and waited. The record opened with a quiet pop. A wide, mournful trumpet line emerged, flanked by organ chords that sighed rather than preached. Elias felt the song meet him where he was, sleepless, slightly hungover, more broke than bold. The melody seemed to lean an elbow on the windowsill of his fatigue, offering commiseration without pity. 6 minutes later, the side ended in a slow fade. He flipped the disc. Side B began entirely differently, finger-picked acoustic guitar over field-recorded bird song. The music felt like morning on the first day of spring, warm enough to open the window. Elias, still draped in the malaise he'd worn all week, frowned. How did this record anticipate an emotion he wasn't even having? That evening, Clara Farrow, his roommate and sometime violinist, came home railing about a producer who'd ghosted her. Elias poured them both cheap red wine and cued the record again. "Listen," he said. He expected the trumpet lament. Instead, rhythmic conga drums burst from the speakers, exuberant, sunlit, impossible not to move to. Clara's rant sputtered. She laughed, swung her hips, and spun between stacks of laundry. "This is perfect," she cried. "Whatever it is, it's exactly my speed." 2 plays, 2 contrasting moods, 2 distinct tracks. Elias lifted the tone arm, caught the groove with a fingernail, and found only smooth vinyl. No visible banding to indicate multiple songs. The disc looked like a continuous press. Somehow, the music reorganized itself. Curiosity overrode caution. Over the next week, he kept a journal. Date, mood, track. Late Monday, anxious about an upcoming showcase, he dropped the needle and heard serene minimalist piano dissolving into watery synth pads. Music to slow the heart. Wednesday afternoon, triumphant after selling a jingle to a podcast, he heard brassy funk straight from a blaxploitation soundtrack. The pattern held under every test. Joy summoned joy, sorrow summoned sorrow. Agitation coaxed balm, arrogance produced swagger. Only once did a selection jar him. Thursday night he felt petty anger at a neighbor's barking dog. The record answered with silence. No hiss, no signal, just the faint rotational wobble of a stylus idling on black. Then, at precisely 43 seconds, a different sound slithered out. So low it resembled room tone until overtones coalesced into a minor chord swollen with dissonance. Elias felt the air tighten. Heat crawled up his jaw. The urge to slam a fist through the coffee table struck him out of nowhere. He yanked the needle off the vinyl, chest hammering. He wrote a single word in the journal, dangerous. Clara thought he was exaggerating. "Maybe you're just fried," she offered. "Take a night off." But Elias, like most musicians, believed in frequencies the way old sailors believed in sea monsters. He needed to know what he was dealing with. Cathedral Records produced no answers. Neither did the internet. Sleeveless vinyl that changes tracks. Returned-only speculation about mispressed European imports. Finally, he took a jeweler's loupe to the runout. On the inner dead wax, almost microscopic, someone had inscribed Aeon 68. That was it. No catalog number, no side indicator. Aeon could have been a band, label, or private joke. The Chicago Public Library's microfiche archive of Billboard magazines coughed up a single reference. Aeon Laboratories Ltd., Evanston, prototype psychoacoustic recordings, filed for dissolution, 1972. Elias doubted the company existed anymore, but Evanston was a short train ride. Saturday morning he boarded the Purple Line, record in a padded backpack. The old warehouse at the listed address had been converted to condos. A mailbox still bore the ghost lettering AEO. When Elias pressed the buzzer, a crackling voice answered. "Who is it?" "I'm looking for anyone connected with Aeon Laboratories." "Depends who's asking." "A musician. I have one of your records." After a pause that sounded like someone evaluating threats, the latch clicked. Fourth floor, Unit 4B. The hallway smelled of citrus cleaner and stale air. 4B's door opened onto a spacious studio filled with reel-to-reel machines, a modular synth, and cables coiled like sleeping serpents. An elderly man wearing welding goggles sat at a workbench dissolving magnet tape in acetone. "Randolph Keene," he said without rising. His voice was thin but charged. "Former head engineer, Aeon Labs. Show me what you've got." Elias produced the vinyl. Keene inspected it under fluorescent light, running a thumb across the blank label. "Haven't seen one of these in 45 years, he murmured. "Called it the mirror press." "Mirror as in reflection." Keene nodded. "Record encoded with multiple phase interleaved programs. Your emotional state biases the cartridge's electrical characteristics, tiny variations in capacitance, redirecting which program demodulates. The groove is constant, but perception collapses it into a single outcome. Quantum voodoo for turntables." "And the silence?" Elias asked. "The part that turns ugly?" Keene's mouth tightened. "Hidden track 13. Experimental composite of infrasonic pulses and shepherd tones, designed to purge negative affect by surfacing it, like lancing a boil through anger catharsis. Federal grant money wanted a non-chemical treatment for repression. We warned them it was unsafe." "You released it?" "We pressed 10 test copies. Management shelved the project after a technician put his foreman in the hospital. The batch was supposed to be destroyed." His gaze steadied on Elias. "How many people have heard your disc?" "Just me and my roommate. Nothing happened to her. She wasn't carrying the payload. Track 13 only manifests if the listener's suppressing rage. The music doesn't cause anger, it weaponizes what's already inside." Keene removed his goggles. "You need to lock that record away." Elias left shaken but unconvinced. Artists live to share discoveries. Locking them away felt like betrayal. Still, he respected Keene's warning enough to keep the vinyl under his bed. 2 weeks later, Elias played Double Scotsman, a basement club notorious for sticky floors and forgiving audiences. His band, Elias on guitar and vocals, Clara on violin, Damon Reyes on drums, closed the midnight slot. Attendance was thin. To fill space between songs, Elias sampled records on stage, layering loops through a pedal board. Near the end of the set, he reached for a crate behind the amp and froze. The Aeon record lay on top, jacketless. He had not packed it. Damon raised an eyebrow behind the kit. "Problem?" Elias, mid-performance adrenaline overriding caution, thought, maybe if I only channel the pleasant tracks, no harm will follow. He dropped the needle. The room filled with psychedelic soul guitars, wah-wah, and choir, a lush swirl that fused with the band's groove until crowd members closed their eyes, swaying, lips parted in relief. The song resolved in heavenly suspended chords. Applause thundered. For the encore, they segued into a jazz punk piece. Elias, euphoric, forgot to swap records. On impulse, part showmanship, part curiosity, He instructed the sound engineer to feed the turntable through the main PA. He struck a final chord on guitar, signaled Damon to cut, and let the record alone speak. No sound emerged for half a minute. People shifted, confused. Someone chuckled. Then bass vibrations bloomed underfoot, subsonic enough to rattle pint glasses. A ragged chord rose, jagged, unresolved. The atmosphere thickened as though oxygen had gained weight. Elias felt sweat cool on his spine. He recognized the silence inside the noise. Track 13. Near the bar, a stocky man in a Cubs jersey clenched his jaw until cheek muscles bulged. Another patron elbowed him by accident. The stocky man swung a bottle without warning. Glass exploded, spraying amber shards. Screams lanced the room. Chairs skidded. A cascade of shouts, curses, fists. Elias jolted out of shock, lifted the tone arm. The violent spell snapped, but damage rolled on its own momentum, fights ricocheting like billiard balls. Security broke up the melee. Police followed. EMTs treated gashes and concussions. No one died, but video of the chaos flooded social media by dawn. Hashtag Vinyl Riot trended with surreal headlines. Mystery record incites bar brawl. Damon slapped Elias's shoulder in the green room afterward, eyes bright. Whatever that was, man, it was powerful. We put life into people. We nearly took it out, Elias snapped. Clara's left cheek sported a bruise where a beer can had struck her. She sided with Elias. You have to destroy that record. Yet the vinyl survived, spilled drinks, boot heels, a thrown mic stand, not even a surface scratch. Pressed from polymer designed for nuclear submarines, Keene told Elias when he phoned the next morning. Weapon-grade PVC. How do I neutralize it? Elias asked. Counter-resonance, Keene said. Record an anti-phase sweep onto a second disc. Play both simultaneously. It will erase the emotional modulation, leave only pink noise. Elias booked midnight studio time at Panopticon Audio. He planned a clandestine session. Capture track 13, invert the waveform, modulate it into an annihilating twin. To play them together, he would need two turntables perfectly synchronized. It was daunting, but possible. He underestimated Damon. The drummer, simmering with unresolved anger after years of dead-end gigs and family pressure, had swiped the record from Elias's backpack while loading gear. When Elias reached for the vinyl that night, the crate was empty except for its blank jacket. Damon, meanwhile, announced a secret warehouse show on the South Side, promising the most visceral experience Chicago has ever felt. Social media buzzed. People chased novelty with reckless hunger. Elias learned of the event from Clara, who intercepted a flyer on Instagram. We have to stop him, she said. They borrowed Keene's van, still wired with antique monitoring equipment, and roared through rain to the warehouse. A derelict packing plant turned rave space. A line snaked around soggy brick walls. From inside came silhouettes flickering in strobe light. Elias made it to the green room minutes before Damon's set. The drummer sat alone, record on his lap, gaze hollow. I can feel it singing, Eli, he whispered. It's like it knows me. Tonight I finally matter. You always mattered, Elias said, closing the distance. This thing doesn't give meaning. It steals it. Damon's fist tightened on the sleeve. You kept it from me, like every opportunity. Old grievances bled into the present. Why should you decide what's dangerous? Because I've heard what it does. Elias extended an open hand. Let me fix this. Damon hesitated. Footsteps thundered outside, the promoter yelling for the band. The moment shattered. Damon shoved past Elias onto the stage. 1,200 people packed the warehouse. Damon raised the vinyl like a sacramental host. Cheers erupted. Every amplifier, speaker stack, and subwoofer had been routed through a single Technics deck at center stage. Damon lowered the needle. For nearly a minute, hush. Then the groundwork rumble. Tectonic, primal, poured through the PA. Strobe lights froze bodies mid-motion like crimes paused in thought. Within 90 seconds, a scream lanced the room. A woman threw her drink at a stranger who had looked at her the wrong way. A man head-butted another hard enough that both collapsed. Violence spread not linearly, but virally, blooming wherever repressed anger lived. Elias rushed backstage where Keen's van equipment was wired into a portable rack. Clara was already patching cables, sweat greasing her temples. "I captured 40 seconds of track 13 from your demo reel," she said. "Ran it through Keen's anti-phase filter. It's rough, but it might cancel enough." They lugged the rack onto an auxiliary riser and fed it into the house mixing board. Elias armed the playback, a lacquered dub plate spinning on a second turntable. At his nod, Clara hit unmute. The antiphase wave, brittle and ghostly, met track 13 head-on. The sonic collision sounded like a church organ imploding inside an iron lung. Overtones strangled each other, sub-bass warped, the air itself seemed to gasp. Crowd members froze, fists mid-arc, expressions blanking as if waking from fever dreams. Some wept, others crumpled, spent. Damon staggered at the main deck. Blood seeped from his nose. The record kept spinning, stylus skating across the label, groove knocked off center by a half-inch chip. Elias had timed his intervention late but effectively. The vinyl had fractured under its own resonance plus a jostled tone arm. Weapon-grade PVC could survive violence from without, but not the perfect frequency from within. Sirens approached. Promoters killed the lights. People stumbled out, dazed and sobbing, carrying one another like post-battle survivors. No fatalities this time, though dozens would nurse injuries and deeper psychic bruises. In the confusion, Elias retrieved the broken record. 2 jagged pieces still hummed faintly against his palms, a dying rattlesnake's buzz. He slid them into separate padded envelopes. The next day, he drove north to Winnetka, rowed a borrowed dinghy onto Lake Michigan's gray expanse, and dropped each half into water miles apart. It wasn't perfect containment. Waves might someday return fragments to shore, but memory of that night convinced him risk was inevitable. Human rage looked for mirrors. He could at least keep one mirror sunken. Clara left for a film scoring contract in Vancouver. Damon checked himself into an anger management program. The band dissolved without ceremony, though rumors of their cursed last show granted them a perverse legend in underground circles. Elias went back to Cathedral Records the following month. Mr. Sang had boxed up 30 years of inventory. The shop was closing. "Gentrification," he sighed. Elias helped carry crates to a storage truck. At one point, a sleeve fell open, revealing a blank black label much like the A on disc. Elias's breath hitched, but this one bore ordinary run-out notation, another forgotten test press. "You taking it?" Sang asked. Elias shook his head gently. "I'm sticking to CDs for a while." On sleepless nights, however, he couldn't resist imagining melodies attuned to healing rather than harm. Records that sensed sadness and offered courage, frustration and gave calm. Mirror music without the shard of rage. He drafted schematics, consulted Keen, began prototyping safe versions of the technology. The line between therapy and weapon remained razor thin. He vowed never to cross it again. One rainy dusk, months after the warehouse debacle, Elias returned to the lake shore. He sat on cold rocks, playing an acoustic guitar that smelled of cedar and hopeful mistakes. No audience, no electricity, just his voice stitched to the horizon. When he closed his eyes, he could almost sense the sunken shards far below, muttering in frequencies too deep for human eardrums. They belonged to the dark now, ammonites coiled in silent strata. Elias struck a final chord and let it ring until water and wind swallowed the sound, leaving only ordinary silence, the kind that listens rather than speaks, holds but does not wound. In that quiet, he felt the difference between music that mirrors and music that guides. He gathered the guitar, stood, and walked back toward the city, intent on writing the latter.